I did have a dinner date, but she had business. Sometimes you can't take your mind off certain subjects, but then there's the allure of great art. So let's walk past it and look at mine. The truth is, the new location of the photo galleries have to do with the fact that it's such a popular medium. People will walk by art just to get to photography, which transcends definition. Notice it's spelled correctly.
I think there should be a different front of it. And I think that's Evan's call.
That's the largest print in the show, and for good reason, I think.
Well, I have to go a distance tomorrow, but I will try to remember to deal with it.
This is slightly whimsical,
Well,
slightly not,
that amount,
and there's a mixture of that. I just wanted to give people
that's sort of the cross purposes.
some sort of a presence
There you go.
in addition to just the work. That actually, there was a living entity by the name of Stuart Pepper who participated
No,
in
it's up to me to
the making of these photographs. And I just wanted to initiate the show with an immersion into the South Polar Plateau, which, of course, is the ultimate destination I've gotten to. Don't neglect some of the whimsy.
There may,
So I did a count yesterday of how many individual pieces of photographic paper are in the show, meaning individual prints. 331. Ted is going to apply to the Guinness Book of World Records. But there are many phases of the work, and it's both polar regions. The skewing, because of the fact that the show is initiated by promises made to National Science Foundation, it's like 3/5 Antarctic regions, and the remainder is near polar regions and North Polar regions. There's only a few included from 1990, including this one. It's a little bit of fun, and then the refraction turned it into something akin to epiphanic. This one poses the eternal question, what is south of the South Pole, among other things, where all directions are north. And I often did something that would just address some of these imponderables. To grade quickly.
you can get that close? Holy shit. That's your basic macro lens.
Yeah.
Who is this man?
That is the co-perpetrator.
I just hung up the picture.
Don't you hug when you meet? Or...
We'll shake a hearty handshake goodbye. This might be the last time we'll be in the show together. He's going to Houston tomorrow, so.
Yeah, I'm coming back Sunday night.
Oh, okay.
So we selected 10 pictures yesterday that will remain here as part of the permanent
Including the
collection.
panel.
ones?
Yeah, that's gonna, these will
count
stay.
as 2.
Yeah, this counts as 2.
Okay.
30 views
And,
of the South Polar Plateau.
Let's see, none others in this room. There are, the others are in the interior part of the
Yeah.
gallery space there.
Okay.
So those will be here in perpetuity, as they say. So anyway, I have to run downtown and get the princess.
That's on the record now. Anyway, back.
See you, Ted.
Yeah. So these are the. Yeah, okay, Ted. Have a good trip. These are the. I have many images made on the polar plateau near the pole, and it seemed I needed to present a selection of them with this kind of dynamic. Some of these, 2 or 3 of them were done in 1991. The rest are from the 1989 trip. There are some of my philatelic devices. Again, a little bit of a self-referential thing. And we even used Ted's door. The only deviation from pure photography in the show, that was when I did a lecture at Colorado College.
The phone is connected to the South Pole.
Yes.
Would you like to make a call?
It's opposed to the hotline, it's the cold line. And Ted took that off his wall. It's my Minneapolis manhole cover that he, in his little comments here, he thought my philosophy about place and placement was well stated there. And that's the earliest photo. It just seemed to be an important photo made in Newfoundland. One of my earliest journeys northward, looking north. And let's see. You looked at these.
Yes.
You ready for coming around the corner from the sacred to the profane, or vice versa?
You want to read this?
I'm not going to read them all. The most beautiful experience we can have is the mysterious. It is the fundamental emotion which stands at the cradle of true art and true science. I am satisfied with the mystery and eternity of life. Albert Einstein. And follow me. Are you going to believe me, or are you going to believe your own eyes? Groucho Marx. And the remainder of this wall has to do with what's at the South Pole. And when I was laying things out, I used a few of the different phases of the work. The most common, of course, are these larger photographs, and then the arrays I did. And then in some cases, the black and white, which I always work with simultaneously. Okay? We shoot? Oh, the little red light. So that was that's sort of the end of the polar grouping. That's actually the LC-130 that flew us to the pole the first time in '89. And it is truly the only link that pinpoint on that continent has with life and the outside of the world. Let's walk over to this side. You can look at those. That's the fact that my dad was not around anymore to see this. I felt it important for me to do something dedicatory. And those are the medals that have some sense of talismanic function for me. This part of the gallery then is all the work that we selected that was done in the dry valleys. Also done mostly in 80, 89, the glaciers and the terrains. That's one from this year. Then playing, as I did at places, just standing, looking at the same spot from different angles. That's the one I made because I don't think I'll be able to enlist on the next Mars landing expedition. Probably as much life on that surface as there is on the surface of Mars. In this past year, I did the largest percentage of work in Antarctica I did from helicopters. This is made from one of two that we went out with a group of geologists on a very terrible day. And it follows around here. These three were actually all on the same proof sheet in that order. When a friend of mine was curating another show, she just felt there was the rhythm that needed to be carried on, so we put it together like that. These arrays were done intentionally down there, and there's quite a large group of them that the ones in the show were selected from. But that was like landing on the surface and making my first views. It had that sort of immediacy. That one in the corner is from this year too, and a very unusual place with a high sense of Zen, perhaps. And as far as we know, we could have been the first people there, which is not too hard to say in most of the places. Let's see. Follow me. In the center are the cases. The earliest work in the show is the work I did in Greenland and Iceland in '76, these black and white photos, yeah. And the limitation was the size of cases available, but there were only about 70 photos in the work I did. And so 11 of them are a good selection. And most of them, the ones you just looked at in particular, have strong reference to people of Scandinavian heritage because they're sites in Greenland that are important in the sagas. And in truth, this is the work that they first bought at MoMA, and then when I got the first Guggenheim, so it stood me in good stead, and it taught me a lot about where I'd be heading. Now, the remaining things in this room are more seaborne photos, and so we get to this big one that is among the things that I did in '87 on the expedition on the sailing boat War Baby. And then the remainder sea shots that aren't done that year were done on the icebreaker. You don't have to hit in on every piece of text on the wall, but you can show that I use the poetry here too. There's the breaker when we were in a launch in the ice. And there's one spot that needed something else in it, and I managed to find something to go. And therefore I gave representation to every conveyance I traveled on in the Antarctic. That was the Russian ship. We can just follow around here. I had that other show downtown that involved just the small black and whites from the Bering South 1987 work, so I didn't know if I'd get any up at all, but since there was such a good flow, a rhythm of different types of work, they seemed to work very grammatically, like little commas, and they generally went with the poems. And the rest are, on this wall are views of ice on the Southern Ocean. That one is from the icebreaker in '89. The rest actually are all from War Baby in '87. he would just tease about the lens cap. And on this last trip, I was making portraits with my little new Fuji, and friend said, "What kind of camera is that?" And I said, "Well, just this." And he says, "Can you make pictures with the lens cap on?" And I was so embarrassed. No, not really. I was saying that, I think, is always will remain my favorite iceberg photo of all. Well, I was wrong. That's for more, baby. But this was an iceberg shot from the breaker. Really nice. That's the storm shot. Modest storm, but it seemed important to include. Well, we were in sheltered waters, so the winds were only about 60 knots. Okay, we could go into the next room. Here. These are some more of the small black and white photos. And they've already been in that book that we did out in Colorado, about that size print with some of the poems. So let's and then this is more around McMurdo Sound. That's the base, McMurdo. That I made this year from a helicopter, and I think it has some sort of truth to it, poignant truth. I like it. The distance is just right, and the light to know that's one of the last homes that we have, really at the edge, but it does kind of act well as a little place for humans to hang on in. That's the memorial cross right above the base, dedicated to the memory of Scott and other people who died exploring in the early years. The tent was made in '87. It's on a glacier above the U.S. Palmer Station. There's a woman who worked at the base, chose to live there. And that one is the Scott's hut on Cape Evans. Those are three from a flight we did. They gave us a special flight. That's all pretty much over parts of the Beardmore Glacier, which Scott made his attempt to the pole. These are both of the Ross Ice Shelf, and most people, when they're asked which one was made from a helicopter and which one was made standing in the ice, there's absolutely no reference point. Well, it's really funny, the other day when I was in Birmingham with this painter, he kept talking all about color. And all of a sudden I started noticing some of these wonderful colors. I don't think about it too much. These two are aspects of the Ross Ice Shelf that are part of these sequences. They were made, they're in order of how they were photographed, and I never knew how long a sequence would be, and when I got home it gave me an opportunity to work out configurations to get them all in the thing. Here's the Wine-Dark Sea, as everyone who looks close enough will agree. That's looking across McMurdo Sound. And that's a hard negative, and that's the best print I've ever seen of it. That's going to stay here, I don't, in the collection. And these are also, well, there's Erebus. This is also from the breaker, way around the coast, rather far away from Antarctica, near a Russian base. That's the Erebus one. That's the breakup of the ice, McMurdo Sound. Well, that's staying here too. Ted loves it. Yes, it's so aberrant from the rest in many ways. The bottom one and the top one were made in the passages along the peninsula from the sailboat. That's the flight deck there of the breaker. And just because it fit well, that's from the voyage. We'll get to some of the other pictures around the corner here. From the 1981 voyage in the high Arctic. In all of these, you can see a bit of the ice blink. As he goes in for the detail. This is from this last trip, also helicopter. Just had an immediacy that I knew I needed to put it in the show. Then we get over into life forms. A couple of nights before, everything was getting ready, all the prints were made. I woke up and I can't believe that I'd forgotten the seals. It was supposed to go in, and I knew it wasn't there, so we got to print that. I took this off the wall of my house.
What does it
to
say?
share. What?
What does it say?
Antarctica. Whatever. And then the last of the Antarctic work pretty much is the penguins in various, well, some of the small ones are in the Falklands, the rest are Antarctica, all around Ross Island or the peninsula area. And you might have to crouch down because I expressly put some of them at a lower angle, a lower height for the kids.
Tell me about this one.
Well, it was, this partial double exposure where I got that false horizon line, and the camera screwed up, the cold or whatever. But I kind of liked it, and there's a fellow I know who probably has the only enlarger who could take, well, it was a combined negative, but it was about 12 inches long, so he printed it up for me. And it plays very nicely. I like what happened. These are the only Empress I've ever seen. And that was just fortunate because it was on the breaker and got to a place where they were still on the fast ice. Here's the a rookery on just about on the mainland near on the edge of the peninsula. 2 species of penguins there. And then there's a leap up to Greenland. This is one that Ted picked out that I hadn't thought of, but the juxtaposition of the penguin colony with the little fishing village is a hunting village, more likely. And these are all the 1990 Greenland cruise on War Baby.
I like this one a lot too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fox coming over the Skerries. Was it you who just told me the North Derivation of Skerries?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what was it again?
Place to go take a shit.
Oh, okay.
Like the equivalent of an outhouse of
Yeah.
an island.
Okay.
The word is derived from shitting or something.
Yeah. There's the a dawn, I see. So this one I think is staying here too. A lot of people take to that. I mean, there's again in the realm of monochromatic, but the scale is so fine. And I've only done a couple of these segmented panoramas this size, but did it just for the show. I've done small ones on a much smaller version. And these are also Greenland certain passages he went through, and a major ice fjord. And here are what I call the placemats, which I like a lot, because they're all from slides, and I've been wanting to play with some of the technologies at hand. But again, I went into Kinko's like anyone could. And the images are all of icebergs in this group, and the quote-unquote information is quite degraded, which bothered the guy who was producing them, because he was quite a technical perfectionist. But I like the idea that we dealt with information that was as degraded as the images in terms of the weather, the faxes, and the radio signals. And these were the things we had to learn about. So it sort of mirrors another way to experience what I was experiencing. These two cases also limited the representation from the work I did in, this is the most north work, which had two phases, the color and the black and white. They're on the pillars too, so you can get there with the camera on both sides. But this was the voyage I took on a ship into the Arctic up to Spitsbergen, and then to the polar ice pack and the Greenland ice pack, and many of the islands in the Northern Ocean. And there are two on this side. We want to get it all in. And then I think we need to go. And then I wanted to have some of the larger, some of those photographs in the bigger enlargements. And we made a selection from what I had on the shelf at home. That's the first time I saw the midnight sun, which I was a little surprised that there were going to be clouds, but why can't there be clouds when the sun's out at night too? And that's north of Spitsbergen, and that I would say is the northernmost point of land. Well, no land. That's when the ship went into the pack and turned around, and that's the northernmost I've been. These are headlands off the northwest coast of Greenland. Oh, excuse me, Iceland. Now, these are the places close to polar regions that I wanted to also include in the show. So the configurational work is work I did when I was down in Patagonia in 1980. Southern Chile and Argentina. Edge of Tierra del Fuego also. And then the two middle panels are the radiation in Lapland, the material I did in '87. I just recently, a year and a half or two ago, I had the big show over in St. Paul, so I only had a few of those in here. And then the remaining back to the Patagonian photographs. Just to prove that there are glaciers in South America. Most people are really surprised. But the Patagonian ice cap is the third largest. And then we can just finish up. There's one more of the small Bering South photographs. They don't look too small when they go that close. And then we can stop, wind up with the wall of water. Those two are from the sailboat Oh, this one too. That's southern coast of Chile. A wonderful morning. The upper one there is just recent off the lower aft deck on the Russian vessel I came north on. And then this one that's sort of bismuth in color, although Ted swears it's aluminum, is west of the Falkland Islands, after some squalls pass through. So, now we have it all, at least. At least, a comprehensive record of what it looked like since it's slated to come down in 3 days. And it was very gratifying to have it here, so I can let people see it, my mom, for one, and some of the people who made it possible, like the people at the National Science Foundation. Here it goes again. The human steady cam. You do this to the wolves also. Cut. Impersonal. And I didn't use the one where I sat on it with the pole sticking out between
what?
my legs. I was sitting on top of the world. Okay. Now. I guess it was a great thing to be on camera.
Karen, after giving that.
Well, you don't get too many of the reflections. Mother, no.
No.
Dick wanted to know about the black and white photos there. I said, well, they're not Jim's.
Well, I think he's got.
One or two.
That's all in Roger's.
He likes what? Yeah.
Oh.
Well, what about
I don't know. Go that direction.
so,
Oh, it is.
You did a pretty good job of the things in the case the first time you took through, so I don't know if you need that. A few people have said the experience is very church-like, and I said that's why we put the crucifix. That is the ruins at Brattahlid, Eric the Red's settlement, where Leif Erikson left to discover.